Hey guys, welcome back to another art video. So in this video I'll be doing a oil pastel portrait of Soraka from League of Legends. There's only a couple of characters that I like drawing from that game, so Soraka just happens to be one of them. This was kind of challenging because it's hard to get details out of oil pastels. It's a very soft and you need to put a lot of pressure on the oil pastel for the pigment to spread and blend, so it was really hard for me to get really detailed lines. I did use a eraser stick, so it's it looks like a pencil, but on one side it's an eraser and on the other side it's like a harder eraser. The pencil itself says that the harder end is supposed to be a typewriter eraser, so I'm guessing that it can remove certain types of inks or maybe scratch it off or something, but I never tried that out. In this specific coloring, I was trying to use the harder end of the eraser stick to sort of move around the pastel to where I needed more detailed lines, but it didn't always work out because sometimes the hard eraser would catch some of the pastel and drag it, and other times it wouldn't, so I wasn't able to tell when it would take pastel or when it wouldn't, but I tried nonetheless. I even tried to look for oil pastel pencils online and there's no such thing, and that does make sense because oil pastels is a very soft media, so if it was in a lead form then it would constantly keep breaking, and that probably wouldn't be that convenient because it would be like those cheap wooden pencils that as you're sharpening them the lead keeps on breaking inside the pencil. So you wouldn't want that, and that makes sense that oil pastel pencils don't exist, but it might be an interesting thing to invent. So I don't know if anyone noticed this, but Soraka's game model was actually colored differently from her splash art. So on her splash art she has purple skin and a burgundy cape, but in her game model she has blue skin and a bright red cape. I understand the blue skin because in her first ever game model it was the same color scheme, so I kind of know why they did that, but it doesn't make sense because in her splash art she looks purple. But then again, I think the people at Riot might have color blindness because that was something that my brothers kind of had. They had trouble differentiating between purple and blue, so I'm guessing that was some confusion when they were making the model. But I really did like the color scheme on her splash art better because having blue skin, a red cape, and a yellow dress, that's all three primary colors on one character, and that's just too much color intensity. There's no balance, and it sort of reminds me of those kid toys because they're all so colorful and vibrant. So I tried to copy the splash art colors because it just looked better. I still did leave her cape red because I didn't have that exact burgundy color that I saw in the splash art. I was trying to make it with brown and some of my dark purples, but it wasn't working out. It wasn't mixing to the exact color. You can mix slightly oil pastels on the paper, but it'll constantly layer on top of each other, so there's gonna be an end point where you can't layer anymore to change the color that you've already laid on the paper. They did fix the purple in her Order of the Banana skin because she actually does have purple skin in her game model as well as the splash art. So anyway, the reason why I chose oil pastels for this drawing was because I was trying to use them up. I'm trying to use up all of my cheaper supplies now that I have more expensive supplies, and I'm just thinking of really quick, easy to do projects just to use up my cheaper supplies. But you're gonna see in the end of the video I post a picture of the final image and also the oil pastels on its side, and you'll see that I barely used even half of my oil pastel sticks. I think maybe if I do something like a mural, then I would use all of them at once. So since I was using oil pastels for this drawing, I wasn't expecting it to turn out that good at the end, but it did end up turning out quite decent. There are still a lot of white spaces in the paper, the little white dots. You can see them more in the outline than the rest of the coloring, but that's because I was using my gray student grade watercolor paper, and it has like this tooth on the surface of the paper, so I needed to apply more pressure when I was dragging the pastel on the paper to force the pastel color to like go into the texture and cover up those white dots. But in certain areas where I tried to get a lot more detail, it was hard to press the oil pastel, because when you press it, then it creates a thicker line, and in most cases I didn't want that thicker line. I wanted like fine detailed lines, so it was kind of challenging to cover up all the white spaces. I did try to cover as much as I could, but there's still a whole lot of white dots all throughout like the character's outline. But I mean, it could translate into the style of how the character is drawn. Since it's consistent throughout the entire illustration, it doesn't look that strange, I guess. Her hair actually turned out kind of colorful, and that's because in my previous oil pastel drawing, it was like a abstract impressionistic painting, so there was a lot of colors and I was mixing a lot, and I was using the white oil pastel like a blender to sort of mash up all the colors. And usually they do make a colorless blender oil pastel, but that's only for like the more expensive brands. I'm pretty sure it probably would have worked for the cheaper brands as well. In my case, I was just using the white to blend everything together, and it did end up picking some of the color that I was blending, and so it just ended up transferring to the new drawing I was coloring. And since Soraka has like white hair, when I was trying to drag the white, it was laying all these strange colors everywhere. So I mean, I think it still looks pretty decent. I mean, it still looks like white hair, but there's just like a whole bunch of colors everywhere, which I think looks pretty. So in her left hand, I wanted to show her using her astral infusion ability. It's like her healing ability where she constantly gives a portion of her health to allies, and it's like the only ability that you can constantly spam, so I wanted to show that. Towards the end of the coloring, I felt like Soraka wasn't popping out from the background enough, so I went ahead and gave her a black outline. I wasn't initially planning to do that because I kind of wanted her to have like a 3D refined sort of look, but seeing as how the pastel ended up leaving a whole bunch of white spaces, it wasn't working out too much. And I did want a background. Like, I think I did mess up the background actually. I was going for like a really dark, half dark, half light, cloudy sort of scene. Sort of the scene that looks like in her splash art, but it didn't end up looking like that. I think, well, maybe, I don't know. The thing on her right looks like clouds, but the thing on her left maybe looks like a mountain or something. It doesn't really look like clouds. But oh well. But I still think she looks better with the black outline, so I just left that in there. And I do really like the sketch a whole lot better than like how I colored it, because if you see in the beginning of the video, the sketch has a lot of detail, and I did spend a lot of time on it, so I had high hopes for like this project. But then again, I did know like the limitations that oil pastels have, so I wasn't too optimistic about it. But I still think it looks pretty decent. I'm probably gonna send this away to someone who makes League videos, because my mom told me that this character is freaking her out. She actually covered it with a piece of paper when I went to wash the dishes, and when I came back I found it covered, and she told me, what did I draw? It looks so freaky. So I decided to get rid of it, but I still think it looks pretty decent. So that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next one.